now.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Fundraising Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about the 5 things that you wish somebody had told you about fundraising events. Now, I know at this rather strange time of year, in this rather strange 2020, events are probably the furthest thing from your mind, but they are a wonderful way to raise friends and a wonderful way to raise funds. And I have been absolutely fascinated by the creative ways that people have been hosting events since COVID hit us. So what we thought we would do is focus on the basics of events and event fundraising, but also take some questions, and please feel free to use the chat box to ask any questions you may have. And let's get into what one can do around fundraising events at the moment. Kel?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Melanie. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's going to be a great discussion topic. And as Melanie said, COVID really just threw us with a curveball as far as events. But just some housekeeping before we get into the actual presentation. Please note that this webinar is recorded. It is put on a public platform. So if you do have questions that may get you in hot water now or 5 years down the line, because it's always out there once it's on the platform, you may private message either Melanie or myself in the chat or put it through as anonymous. Please make sure that your camera is off and you are muted, just so that we don't hear the hidey-jars and the dogs. We will facilitate the Q&A in the chat afterwards, and the recording will be up on our YouTube channel by the end of the day. And we will share when it is up on our WhatsApp group. Melanie, over to you.
Thanks, Calvin. So the folk who've been around for a while know that we started this in the depths of lockdown as a way to encourage fundraisers to keep the chins up and keep going and to share knowledge and experience. And we are somewhere around the 40 mark of presentations that we've given since April. And we're really excited to have you here today. Just a little bit about us. I have been a fundraiser for a lot of years. I'm trying not to say how many these days. It makes me feel old. I've run my own consultancy for the last 8 years, and I'm really privileged to be able to say that I have Kelvin Glenn as my friend and my colleague, and sometimes my mentor in fundraising. And I'm going to hand over to him to introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And yeah, likewise, Melanie is my go-to person very, very often. So we've had the privilege of working together for many, many years. We're not going to say how long. But yeah, it's always important to find what I call that coffee buddy that you can bounce stuff off and you can cry on their shoulder and you can celebrate your successes with. And that's what we do together. So although we work very independently, there are projects we work together on, but we support each other day in and day out. So my name is Kelvin Glenn. Those are my contact details. I've also worked in the sector for many years. And yeah, it's a privilege and an honor to be able to facilitate these sessions. And we always say to the team and the tribe that this is your platform. We came up with the idea to bring us all together, and we facilitate and are the custodians of this platform, but the platform is only as successful as us as a family. So please utilize it. We have a WhatsApp group. If you're not on the WhatsApp group, please, there are our contact numbers. Get hold of Melanie or myself. We will share, and we will get you onto the WhatsApp group. The WhatsApp group is there to share knowledge, to share experiences, to share networks, to support each other. It's not an advertising platform, ladies and gentlemen. It is a networking platform. And it's really become interactive. We've got over 200 people on the WhatsApp group. And we also talk about what the upcoming events are with regards to Fundraising Talk, and that is our communication channel. So let's get right into it. Okay, Melanie, over to you.
I shall start us off. So the first thing that I really wish somebody had told me when I first started doing events is that events take time. This is not something you're going to organize overnight. And particularly for your bigger sort of your gala type events, you are talking about a year in advance, sometimes even longer, depending on what you need to put in place. Can we pop on? Thank you. So I've come up with a list over the years, and the wonderful Jill Ritchie, who was one of our speakers recently, has been hugely instrumental in adding to this list for me. what are the questions we need to ask when we're getting ready? When is it going to take place? Because the first thing you have to do is check for double bookings. I'll never forget, we had tried to get a local comedian to do something for us at an event in Johannesburg some years ago. And when we phoned him and we said, oh, well, we're looking at this date, he says, oh, no, well, actually, I'm presenting at the Guide Dogs event at 7, and then at 8:30, I've got to sort of be somewhere else so that I can do the Amy Beale Foundation event. I thought, 2 massive events on the same night. How the heck does that happen? And then we were going to add a third. So of course, we very swiftly changed our proposed date, which took forever because you need to consult with the board and management and the team and the entertainers and all of that. So it really is important that you check for double bookings, check that it doesn't clash with other fundraising activities. Does it suit everybody? Does it clash with holidays? And very importantly in South Africa, does it clash with sporting events? Because I made the grave tactical error of getting married during the rugby season. And half of the men at my wedding kept disappearing for long periods during the reception to catch up on the rugby. So keeping all of that in mind, there's a little bit of an art to this and a little bit of science, but you really have to be hugely careful about the dates you select. And then, who is your target market? Who are you trying to attract? Who is your ideal event goer? And then, of course, what's the format? Is it formal? Is it informal? Are people expected to dress up? Are they expected to do something strange or wear something strange or say something strange? So all of this needs to form part of the planning process. And Calvin, if I remember correctly, there are more questions coming up, and I think perhaps you'd like to.
There we go. Right. So, and ladies and gentlemen, as Melanie said, it goes back to the planning. You know, that old traditional saying of failing to plan is planning to fail. And I think the challenge for us is, in the sector, is that there's a perception that, oh, this charity did a fantastic event and they raised R1 million and what. And people on the outside think it was just easy and it all just happened. It's a lot of work and a lot of planning. So please look at your planning. So some more questions to consider is, how many people should attend? And especially going forward with where we are in the place of the world that we live in right now with social distancing and all these other issues. You know, how many people can your venue hold? And please don't make the mistake. I have bought tickets to charity fundraisers, supporting local charities, and get there and we squished in like sardines or a cheap flight to nowhere because they've oversold tickets and they're squishing another table and they're squishing another table because you want to sell those tickets. Please consider the audience. So how many people should attend? Rather have less people in quality than squish it and nobody enjoys the event. What is your break-even attendance figures? And this is so important because if you need 500 people to break even, you've got to be realistic. Will you get 500 people? If you need 100 people to break even and you can house 300 people at your event, that's fantastic because then it's 2/3 profit. So please also consider all that. And then how many volunteers are needed? I can't reiterate this enough. You cannot have enough volunteers to help at an event. There is nothing more off-putting, and I've done it as the fundraiser, where your donors arrive and your board chairman arrives and the government officials arrive and you are sweating and you are panting because you've been putting up banners and you've been cleaning glasses and you've been parking cars because you don't have enough people to help you. As the fundraiser, yourself and your CEO are the hosts of the event. You need to be dressed to the nines. You need to be smiling all the way. Ladies, you need to have the best makeup and the best frock and the best hairdo because you are the face of the brand. But there's nothing more off-putting when the fundraiser comes panting up to a volunteer, to a donor and looks like they've been come out the kitchen. So use your volunteers and be very clear with your volunteers. What are their role? What are they also getting out of it? I've seen events go horribly wrong where you have 50 volunteers and then you forget, oh, we've got to feed these people and we've got to sit them somewhere and the volunteers want to watch the show as well. So just manage your volunteers very carefully. How many ticket sellers do you need? And look, with technology, it does make it easy these days where you can have platforms where we can direct the audience to buy online, which would be best, because gone are the old days that people have raffle sheets and ticket books because of money issues and reconning and all the rest of it. But how many ticket sellers do you need if you are going to be selling tickets manually, or your network to promote it? What will the event cost? And this one, I've been caught off guard before. So we're going to do a fantastic event. We're going to raise R1 million. Great. And then you go to the venue and the artists and they say, yeah, fantastic. We're on board. But can we have a deposit, please? And then you go to the finance department and they go, we don't have 400,000 Rand cash to give you. So please make sure that you know what your costs are and have you got that money in a kitty if you're going to have any upfront costs. What sponsorship should be obtained? There's a wonderful opportunity with events, and I've seen some really fantastic ones with the luxury car brands, with luxury makeup brands, with the luxury watch brands, where they have come on board and just taken an event to an absolute different level by coming on board as the sponsor, because they bring a whole different vibe to an event. And also it just creates a buzz. It adds value to your event. So look at sponsorship, but be very strategic with your sponsorship. And then what is the realistic profit? So please don't kid yourself when you see that another charity had an event and they had 500 people at the event and you think, yo, it was 200 Rand a ticket, so therefore they made so much money. Every event costs money. And even if you get the venue sponsored and all the artists sponsored, it still costs time and resources to put it together. So to be realistic with your profits. Events are twofold. One is, yes, we want to make money. Absolutely. We have to make money out of events, or it's not worth doing. But the second great thing with events is it's a fantastic marketing opportunity. It's a fantastic opportunity to sign up individual giving. And it's a fantastic opportunity to bring on new sponsors, especially if your audience are participating in an auction and they put it through their company or their family trust. So it's a lovely fundraiser, but also second tier, it's getting and building on that database and getting new friends to your organization. Mel, do you want to take this one?
Yes. There are lots of questions. We spent a lot of time drawing up this checklist. The one that I always worry about is, does the idea fit the cause and the work? You know, if you are a rehab unit or something along those lines, you really want to think about having something like a wine tasting. You know, it just, how is that going to look to a prospective donor? How is it going to look to your current supporters? But if it doesn't, and sometimes, I mean, we've been to some very strange events, Calvin and I, over the years, but it was fun. It was something different. You know, one of the best events I ever went to was a breakfast in the dark that was run by the Society for the Blind. It was probably one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, because I don't know if anyone ever has been to one of these. You put into groups, so it's basically your table becomes your group, and you're led into this room. Everybody puts their hands on the person in front of them's shoulder, right? So I was the tail. I was the one right at the end of my table. And they bring you into a room. You're led by a partially sighted or blind person. And the room is completely dark. It is a degree of darkness that is absolute. Somehow my hand slipped off the person in front of me's shoulder, and I ended up alone in the dark. Eventually, I stumbled over to a chair and sort of mumbled to the person that I thought was to the one side of me, does anybody mind if I sit here? And I sat down and got chatting to this person. And eventually, I think we started to eat, and sort of halfway through the meal, the lights came up. It turned out I was in a small room. The function room was not very big. I was surrounded by people who were very unthreatening and nice, but there was a time that I wanted to sit on the floor and cry because I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how big the room was. It made me so conscious of the gift of my sight that if ever I was going to be a donor to that cause, that was the day for it. And that's what we talk about, the idea of fitting the cause and the work. It doesn't have to. I mean, sometimes it can just be something that's fun and weird and wacky, but be conscious. If you are going to sort of veer off the normal track, make sure that everybody's on board and that it's appropriate. Does it fit your audience? I mean, it's pointless having a hike in the forest when your audience's average age is about 85. Are there similar events that are hosted on a regular basis? So is it overexposed, or can you capitalize on its popularity? Will your sponsors like it? Now, sponsors are a bit like donors. You don't really want to be sponsor-led in the same way as you don't want to be donor-led. But at the same time, if you have an idea that's really going to appeal to a particular sponsor, take advantage. Most importantly, could it offend anyone? And that is always so subjective, so much in the eye of the beholder, that you really have to give it serious thought. We have seen some absolutely cringeworthy things happen at events, all with the very best of intention, with no intent to do any harm, and it's just backfired horribly. But most importantly, we come back now to the point that we started with. Do you have enough lead time? Is there enough time for you to arrange, set up, make happen all of the things that you need to in a professional manner? And if you can't do that, then I would argue that you need to postpone. And of course, COVID has thrown all of this a little bit on its head. I have been to some physical fundraisers, socially distant, very careful, outdoors, and they've been fantastic. With my local Rotary Club, we did a rubber duck race down a canal a couple of weeks ago, and it was brilliant. Nobody got COVID, nobody coughed on anybody. We were out in the sun, enjoying ourselves. We raised, for 2 small clubs, we raised 20,000 Rand, which was rather nice. And it was a successful event. So don't think that you cannot do physical events at the moment. You just have to do it with care.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. And just on the offending anyone, just an example is, the lovely golf days we all like to do, which are done a dime a dozen, and they are successful and they do raise money for charity. But on a number of occasions, I have attended golf days and been offended myself and cringed at the MC or the person doing speeches. So please also be careful. When we talk about offending anyone, it's not the tone of the event, but also be very selective on who gets the hand on the microphone. Because after a couple of toots, people can go south. And we've seen some horrible things where people have offended the audience, offended the cause, used vulgar language for a church-based or faith-based organization. So just be very, very careful of who gets hold of that microphone and who says what, because it can throw your event completely. Right, events require planning. So to the ladies in the room, because they will relate to this, an event is not a gunshot wedding. If you're prepared to take a year to plan your wedding, you should be prepared to take a year to plan your event. And I think the biggest challenge for our sectors is when people come to you with an idea or an event and they want the charity to be the beneficiary. You also need to be very careful about partnerships, because they can say everything's sorted, promise, guarantee. But remember, the minute you are the beneficiary of that event, your brand association is aligned with that event. So even though you're not liable because it's not your event, if it goes south, your brand association is there. When it goes well, your brand association is there as well. So please just make sure that you spend your time with planning. So events do take time to plan. And getting the basics right, the fundamental basics. First thing is your budget. How much do you want to raise? What is it going to cost? What is your profit margin? Know what the money is going to do. Venue. Is the venue appropriate? Is it the right venue? Look at places where events have not been done before for charity. Don't go to the same venue that the charity down the road was there last week, because your audience are going to be bored of going to the same venue. There's so many amazing, clever, quirky venues around South Africa that you can play with.
And of course, Calvin, don't forget, your venue has to now factor in social distancing.
Absolutely. Social distancing and access for people with disability and limited ability. So please be very sensitive of that. I mean, talking about faux pas, I went to an event that was working with beneficiaries that had limited ability, and there was no access for those that were in wheelchairs. So like faux pas. And nobody realized it because you just took it for granted. So PR, promotions, and ticket sales. Look at that. Have a plan on that. Know what platform you're going to be using. Set it up properly, and please make it easy for the audience. You know, don't advertise your event on social media. Then I'm going to do 14 click-throughs to page 72 of your website, and then I need to go onto my bank and load it onto my credit card. You've lost me by that time. Make it quick and easy. You've got Quicket, you've got SnapScan, you've got so many platforms you can use. Speakers and ambassadors, to my last point. Make sure that the speakers are aligned to your organization. They are briefed properly. It's no use getting a top name celebrity or a top name comedian and they have no cooking clue on what you're doing. You need to brief them, and it's a simple briefing document. You don't have to meet them, but write a briefing document to brief your speakers and ambassadors. And please, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, program and entertainment, make sure your program runs on time. There is nothing more off-putting when you go to a gala dinner and the main course is served at 11 o'clock at night because the guest speaker waffled on for 2 hours about nothing. Please respect your audience. That will make or break your event. Make your program fun. Make it interactive. As Melanie said, try and align your program so that the audience experiences a day in the life of your beneficiaries. And your entertainment as well. Make sure that your entertainment is appropriate. We've spoken about volunteers. Make sure you've got those volunteers signed up. They brief properly, they dress properly, they know what they need to do, and they are there to help and serve. They're not there for a free meal and a free show. Catering and special needs. Is it appropriate? Are you selling alcohol? Aren't you selling alcohol? Are you serving vegan and gluten-free and all these new things that people are wanting? Make sure that that is appropriate. Oh, the age-old AV requirements. We've all had that where AV has gone horribly wrong. Make sure there is a backup. In South Africa, we have the challenge of load shedding. So make sure your venue has got a backup generator. So if there is load shedding, your presentation still shows. Test your sound if you're going to be showing videos. And lastly, sponsorship. Ladies and gentlemen, sponsorship is a great opportunity, as I said, to market and to promote your event, but also to give a corporate an opportunity to partner with you because they want to access that
Calvin,
market.
your sound is gone.
Ooh. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Melanie, can you hear me? Okay, I'm back. Sorry, guys. So on your sponsorship, please make sure that you're giving that sponsor the opportunity. It's a business transaction. They're going to want something in return, which is obviously to get to your audience, but also your sponsors can bring their audience. It's a great opportunity to say to your sponsors, please, will you promote this on your social media? Please, will you invite your top clients? So yeah, that's it on getting the basics right. Melanie?
And I think that before we move on, it's also just the little details. And those were the big things. Those were, but as we were talking, I was thinking, gosh, I hope our event has a photographer. And if you're using a volunteer photographer, do you have a backup? You know, all these things were going through my head as I sort of went through all the checklists that I've used over the years. But yes, and have a master checklist. I'm a huge fan of master checklists. And what I normally do is in about sort of the last month before the event, I have a cardboard box and the master checklist is above the cardboard box. And the minute something is ready, whether it's programs, whether it's bin bags to make sure you've got bin bags at the event, whether it's bibs for volunteers to wear, goes into the box and it gets ticked off on the checklist as I go so that I can be absolutely sure that I have everything that I need. I always have an emergency box of stationery, pens, name tags, all kinds of things, just in case.
Yeah. And Melanie, also, I think the important thing is, because I've learned this and had this horrible experience where traffic, family getting ill, whatever, make sure that there are at least two people that have a very clear understanding of exactly what needs to happen. Because if one of you don't make it to the event, or your chairman doesn't get there for whatever reason, always have backups. So the big mistake we as fundraisers do is we want to control everything. But if something happens with your family, you are late for the event, the whole event then is late. So make sure you have that backup.
Definitely, definitely. So, which brings us to point 3, which is that not all events are created equal. You need to be very clear on what you want to achieve at your events. Can we move on, Cal? There we go.
Yep.
Why? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to make money? Are you trying to encourage new supporters, new interest in your organization? Are you simply thanking the people who have supported you in the past? Are you trying to grow your public profile? And I think it's very important. We get sucked into this idea that every event must make money because, of course, we're all about the money and the making of the money. And that is so. But I think there are times when the appropriate thing to do is just to say thank you, or just to promote the work that you're doing and share the incredible change that you're bringing about in the communities that you serve. And what's interesting about that, the money comes.
Yeah. So on that point, Melanie, I think also just a word of advice to the audience is be very strategic. So if you're inviting your donors and your audience to an award ceremony to recognize the success of your beneficiaries and their successes, then that must be the focus. Yes, you can throw in that you need money to support the next cohort of beneficiaries. But I've been to events which were supposed to be award ceremonies, and it was a purely fundraising gala dinner. So just be very clear about what the audience understands they're coming to, so that they don't feel bombarded and like they've been hijacked.
So here are some harsh truths. Do you want to go over, Carl?
No, go for it. Go for it.
Not all events make money. Not all of them are meant to, but make sure that you're clear on whether you're fundraising or friend raising. And I think it's also important to think about the fact that there are hidden costs in events that don't always make their way onto the expenditure budget, but they have a huge impact. The amount of time you spend, the petrol you may spend rushing around getting auction items, phone bills, all manner of things. It's quite interesting. I think if you really had to sit down with events fundraisers and have a really frank and honest conversation about the real profit of each event, you'll find that it's less than they think. So I always feel you have to look to the other soft benefits, that friend raising, the marketing of the organization, spreading the word about the organization, thanking. It's so important. You know, it's the simplest thing. And most donors, Calvin and I have had experience of it year in and year out. When you go to a donor and say, thank you so much for what you've done, we really appreciate it, the first thing they'll say is, oh, no need to thank, really nonsense. They are loving that you're thanking them. So really keep that in mind when you set events up. You also need to work within the capacity of your team and the capacity of your audience. It's pointless putting on a black tie gala dinner in an informal settlement. There are other things you can do that people will enjoy a lot more, that will be more appropriate to the audience, and that will bring in money, even if it happens in an informal settlement. You would be absolutely surprised. Understand the socioeconomic profile of the people who will attend your event. Are your auction items appropriate? I've been to a couple of events where there have been some really strange auction items. And having been on the receiving end of the donation of auction items, I understand when you get something donated, there's not much you can do about its weirdness. But keep it in mind, don't go too weird. I've looked at some things where I've thought, oh, I would maybe not have put that one out. I would have found a way to work around that. But anyway, and then of course, COVID-19, the word of the year. We can't get away from it. It has definitely changed the way we do things. Some organizations have pivoted to online events, and they have been absolutely brilliant. The Sunflower Fund, that's one of their core fundraising methodologies, is events. And they had to think very quickly this year about how they would do things differently. I attended their Women's Day event, and it was excellent. I attended it with 2 other women in one of their homes. So we didn't feel like we were completely alone sitting in our office by ourselves looking at our screen, but we were socially distant, and it was a brilliant 2 hours. We were all sorry when it ended. So there are definitely ways that you can host things successfully working around the COVID restrictions.
So create a story. Bottom line is, how are you going to get the bums in the seats? Because at the end of the day, you want as many bums in every single seat as possible, so you want to be full. And also be realistic with your break-even numbers. You know, if you can get 100% capacity, fantastic, but what is that break-even? And you need to make sure you achieve above that break-even. So you need to create the story, telling the story of the event. Give people that sense of belonging. They need to feel part of the story, of becoming part of the solution. It's not, gone are the days where it's a night out and it's a lovely meal and it's a time to dress up and network. People want to give back to purpose. People want to support events because it is linked to a purpose. They want to make sure that if they're spending R1,000 a head, that is a good cause. Make it shareable. Give that various shapes and sizes that are easy to share online. So you want your audience to pass it on to their networks. You want your audience to get their mates at work to buy tickets as well. You want the audience so that the senior management of the company says, our company is going to buy 5 tables because we really support this cause, and invite their clients. And if you're talking to the public at large, whether it's a duck race, it's a golf day, it's a fun run, it's a forest walk, whatever, it's a picnic, it's important that you create that sense of community. It's important that you create that sense of it is the event to be seen at. And this is all in the storytelling right at the beginning. So invest the time and the money in getting your campaign correct, because to successfully run an event, you actually need a campaign to promote it and to sell those tickets, and give yourself enough lead time. And as we put here, it's amazing to see how many people enjoy sharing ideas that they identify with. So if you're doing something in the forest for an environmental organization, you will be amazed at how many people are like-minded about supporting environmental organizations, but also want to take their family and go do a picnic in the forest, because it's not something we do every Sunday. So it's really, really important. And then in the way of technology, the way we work now, those things called hashtags that everybody buzzes on, they work. It gives you great opportunity to get to markets that you never knew you had. But create keywords and hashtags that strongly promote your event and your cause, not just the event, but also be very sensitive to the audience and be conscious of not offending anybody, and make sure that whatever hashtag you choose is easy. And the lovely thing with events is that you can then follow through that hashtag, that on the live event or on the actual event, during the event, you can ask people to post on social media the great experience they're having, which is further marketing and further exposure for your organization. So you really have to play with the storytelling. And like any fundraising, just as you start a campaign or you rehashing your website, an event, communication is key. Because without strong call to action and strong communication, your ticket sales will be affected. So make sure that you've got good storytelling. And as we keep on bleating on this network, bounce it off colleagues, bounce it off someone else. Someone said to me yesterday, 2 pairs of eyes are better than 1. So don't presume because you've read it 14 times and you spell checked it 14 times and it sounds great to you that it's going to sound great to your audience. Talk to people, bounce it off people, do focus groups to see what the messaging says. so that your audience gets the clear messaging, gets the call to action, but most importantly, they support your events, sign up, and they attend. No?
Definitely. But the sad news is, I always say to people, I love events because they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not the end, though. Once you have taken your shoes off, nursed your blisters, swept up the debris, and tidied up the venue, you have some follow-up actions that you need to do, and the sooner the better.
Sorry, Mel, let me just move the slide. Okay.
You need to evaluate your success. Apart from the obvious, which occurs to me now, which is remember to thank all the people who need thanking as soon as possible, preferably first thing in the morning. Then sit with your team, sit with your volunteers, sit with the people who were involved in the event, and go back to those questions that we asked at the beginning, that lovely long laundry list of questions. Was the event successful based on those questions that you asked? Did you reach your target? Did you exceed your target? That would be great. Did your target market attend? If you identified what your ideal event attendee looked like, did they actually look like that in the end? Was the choice of event, location, catering, entertainment, was that what set the tone for the evening, or did it detract? And the most important question is, would you do it again? Now, I have to say that after every event I do, I sit back and go, well, I'm never going to do that again. So once you've got over that, then sit back and say, right, based on the success of the event, is it something I would repeat? And if it is, then what could you do to make it even better next time?
And Mel, I think it's very important on this note that also, just as we put in so much effort as fundraisers when we are writing proposals and writing reports to donors, exactly the same with an event. Just because it's an internal event that you're doing yourself, it doesn't mean you're not accountable. So I always say it's very important to do this debrief and then write an actual report to yourself that you can present to your board or present to your boss and say, here's the successes, here's the challenges, here's how we will improve. If we're going to do it next year, this is why. If we're not, what were the lessons learned? You know, because if you don't unpack, even if it wasn't a success, there's still lessons to be learned. There still would be some brand equity. There still would have been some new database members in your database. So don't be too harsh on yourself, but it's very important. I always say reports are vitally important, because if you get hit by a bus or leave the organization tomorrow, the next poor soul that it takes over your seat as a fundraiser has to pick this up. And it would be nice if they've got that report in the file at the end of the event, so that, and also I think that the thing is that, you know, when you're planning the next event, you can go back and look at the report and say, okay, what did we learn from this? How can we do it better?
For sure. And I think that the one thing that I always find so important is I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So there are some little things that will really annoy me. I make a note of those so that I don't repeat them the next year. We've had things that we could not have foreseen really affect the tone of an event. And I'm going to give you it's a bit of a funny example. It was funny now. It was not funny at the time, I can assure you. I was with a client. We were doing an event in quite a nice venue in the southern suburbs of Cape Town. And there was one gentleman who had been invited by his company. They had bought a table. And I don't know if he overindulged or if he overestimated the capacity of his liver, but he was absolutely drunk, like the worst kind of drunk you can imagine. And the room had pillars, and at the base of each pillar was a tall flower pot with a big palm in it. So that the actual flower pot was kind of waist height, if that makes sense. So he started to feel ill. And of course, funny enough, I noticed him. I'm one of those event people that even when I'm not actually a host, I spend the whole evening checking to see if there are any problems in the room. And I spotted him and I thought, you look a bit off. He thought he went behind the pillar. Where he actually ended up was standing right beside the people who were on the stage doing something to win a diamond. There was a diamond hidden in a cupcake, and 10 people got a cupcake that they had to eat and find the diamond. And as people were doing this man was doing the unspeakable into the flower pot, thinking he was hidden by the pillar, but actually he was in full view of everybody, not just full view, but very audible as well. It was not the most pleasant of experiences for any event goer. You've got to be prepared for those things, whether it's having a mop and a bucket handy or a blanket to hide the person who's done something unspeakable. Just remember, and you have to have a sense of humor. These things will happen. There is nothing you can do about it, but grin and bear it and hope like heck it doesn't happen next time. So as part of your post-mortem process, look at all of the weird stuff that happened that you had no control over and look at ways to mitigate it next time.
Yeah. Thank you, Mel. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the 5 questions somebody had asked or told me about, the 5 things. We have asked people to put stuff in chats. I don't see lots of questions.
I don't know if perhaps we want to come, we're a nice small group today, so maybe let's stop sharing screen and maybe someone would like to raise their hand and share an experience or ask a question that they have about events.
Okay, let's do that.
And we'll change it to gallery view so that we can see everyone. Does anyone have a ghastly experience or maybe a success story that they'd like to share? I do enjoy the ghastly stories though, because they make me feel better about the ghastly ones I've experienced. Well, actually, while people think about it, one of the things I wanted to say is if you're hosting an event where there's catering, please consider using an NPO that uses catering as an income generator. I was very fortunate to host a wonderful Christmas Carol service at Constantia, Groot Constantia last year with the, I can't think of their name now, it's one of our beautiful choirs in Cape Town. And we were very fortunate to have Brownies and Downies supplying they're amazing brownies, which if you're in Cape Town, they're an absolute institution, best brownies you'll ever eat. And we also had I Love Coffee, which is an organization. So Brownies and Downies train people with intellectual disabilities to work in the catering industry. And I Love Coffee trains deaf people to be baristas. And we were so fortunate to have them at the event because it gave them an opportunity to be exposed to an audience that they otherwise may not have been exposed to. But it also gave us an opportunity to support somebody in our sector and in our community. So it's really important. And I'm so thrilled to see that Debbie from ZipZap is here today. If you're hosting an event in Cape Town, don't forget about ZipZap. They are absolutely amazing. They have wonderful, talented little humans who do the most remarkable things. And they are available, obviously, for a small fee. As we know, we're all nonprofits and we're trying to make some bucks. But use organizations like that, please, in your events. It just adds something so special. But I see that Jackie has a little story to share. So perhaps she'd like to come off mute. Just a reminder, Jackie, we are recording.
No problem. Thanks, Melanie. And I'm not going to put my camera on. I've got my at-home look. But just something that a wonderful, brilliant auctioneer taught me. I had loads of gifts that I was going to give away as little draw prizes at an event. And I had a few bigger things that we were going to auction. And the auctioneer said to me, "You give nothing away. Give me all of that stuff and I'll auction it off for you." And with that happening, I tripled my target by auctioning all sorts of quirky things that we were going to use to give away. but he taught me that that's what people were there for. They were there to help you raise funds. Anyone who was interested in helping you raise funds were going to be enthusiastic enough to do that, to help you do that. So yes, whilst it's nice to do draws and giveaways, it's also really key to remember why you're doing your event and not to just give away your profits. On that same note, a few years later, when I was running my own little business, I was invited to an event as well, and I gave a donation of some cupcakes. I also sold some cupcakes at the event. I sold a few cupcakes at the event, and I then gave the proceeds to the organization as well as a donation. I was interested and I followed up afterwards, and I asked them how much they had made from the whole event. Now, at this event, beautiful, wonderful gifts were being given away in lucky draws throughout the event. Those gifts I cringe when I think about the value of what was given away. So when I followed up with the organization as to how much they had raised, it was a tiny amount. And my few cupcakes that I sold at the event and then gave them the proceeds for, my few cupcakes had made 10% of what they raised overall. But it was a small amount. So I wish I'd, been able to teach them that lesson then, that you don't give away all of what you can raise funds from. So yeah, that was a very real experience for me. And then I was on the other end to witness what not to do a few years later. That's just a little lesson for everyone.
Absolutely. And
Thanks,
actually,
Mel.
to add on to that, Jackie, thanks for that. I did an event with Jill Ritchie many years ago for Food Forward. It was still called Food Bank at that time. And we got lots of little prizes. People gave like a manicure or a pedicure or a little voucher for something. And we ended up with about, 35 or 40 of these quite small little giveaway prizes. And Jackie, we took a leaf out of your book. Instead of giving them away, we randomly assigned a value to them. And we guaranteed that whatever was in there was double the value of the rand value of what you were going to give. People fought over them. It was the funniest thing because they felt as though it was a small investment. I think we had sort of 100 rand, 50 rand, 200. I think the most expensive one was 300 rand. And if we had had 100 envelopes, we'd have sold them all in seconds. So we also fall into the trap of thinking it's got to be a 6-night stay on Rovos Rail or a balloon trip, hot air balloon trip on the Serengeti. It doesn't have to be. You can actually make really decent money and have a lot of fun in the process with those smaller gifts. So don't neglect the smaller donations and sponsorships because they've all come from the heart. There's all good intent behind it. So find ways to maximize the opportunities at an event.
Fantastic. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to next week, the next 2 weeks, actually? So Mel, I just want to put those slides up.
Yeah.
So we are there. I'll get myself organized. Screen.
You know what, if it wasn't for Kelvin, we would never have these events because my technological knowledge is about -10. So thank goodness
that's the
for
discipline.
you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so just a reminder, we are recording and this will be up on our YouTube channel probably by later this afternoon. But Mel, maybe you want to talk to us about next week?
Yes, so next week is going to be quite an interesting one, particularly if you're based in Cape Town. The collaboration dialogue has become something of a staple in the city. They host 2 a year. It's done in partnership with Nedbank Private Wealth and a whole lot of organizations locally, Inyatelo, SAFE, all of the organizations representing nonprofits and fundraising get together twice a year to share their knowledge, their expertise, their experiences. And of course, this year has really been a year for experiences, hasn't it? So they've gone digital, which is wonderful because it means that anybody, no matter where you are in the country or even in the world for that matter, is very welcome to join us. We have offered them our Thursday slots because, as we've just been talking about with our events, you don't want to clash with other people's events. So what we decided is that we would collaborate with the collaboration dialogue, and Calvin and I are actually co-facilitating the event. We're going to be meeting some amazing people who have done remarkable things over lockdown and over the whole post-lockdown COVID experience. And it's just ending the year on a high note, talking about what's possible and thinking about what we can do next year. So it's a little bit different to our normal format. We will still be advertising it, but tickets are available on Quicket. They are free. There is no charge, but you will need to register on Quicket to get all of the login information because Nedbank very kindly allows us to use their terribly sophisticated audiovisual system. So you will need to actually RSVP to the event so that you get your logins. But we would be so thrilled to see you there next week. There are a lot of people on the forum who put an enormous amount of their time, their effort, and their resources. People like Colin Habberton, Sarah Scarf, Ferial from Inyatelo, who do a lot for the sector. And we're really thrilled that Nedbank has been supporting it for as long as they have. They've been supporting it for several years now. I know we've had some in Durban over the years, and we've had some in Cape Town, in Johannesburg. But of course, as we say, going digital means we can go anywhere. So please do join us on the 3rd. We'd love to have you.
And just an appeal, ladies and gentlemen, is that it's not limited to fundraisers. If you want to invite colleagues in your organization, board members, please share. So we will be advertising it on our WhatsApp group. Melanie will put the link up, and we really look forward to seeing you there, and really just unpacking, celebrating stories of success, especially given where 2020 is thrown us so many curveballs. It's going to be a very, very interesting discussion. All right, and then the week thereafter, sorry, I've got barking dogs, the joys of working from home. The week thereafter, which is the 10th of December, which we are really then going into Christmas season, and that will be our last session for 2020. A bittersweet moment. It's been an interesting year, but what we want to do on the 10th of December is really just recap and pick out the sweet spots from all of the 40 plus presentations we've done on this platform. So if you've missed any of them, it's going to be a really nice, just high level highlight of all the stuff we've talked about throughout this journey. And then obviously looking forward to seeing you back again in 2021. So please don't miss the 10th of December. It'll be a lovely year-end wrap-up. It'll be our little Christmas party for this network to say thank you, and also just to reflect and look at the lessons learned and the successes we've had over 2020.
Definitely. Please, if you would like to join our WhatsApp group and you haven't, please let Calvin or myself know. Calvin's company is called Kaluma SA. Mine is called Words That Count. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. Please do make contact with us. I will also be using my database to send information out about the collaboration dialogue. So if you would like to be added to that database, please just pop onto the Words That Count website and sign up to our newsletter. And but otherwise, please stay safe. And we will see you next week as we join with the Collaboration Dialogue team.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Take care.